Hello, friends. Welcome to Creative Compass. We are navigating the paths back to our inner artists. I'm Aimee Blair, and we are speaking with artists and creative teachers and guides who are sharing with us the journeys that they've taken to find their creative lives and sharing with us some of the wisdom they've learned along the way. Today, we are speaking to Michelle Baker. Michelle is the owner of Embodied Art Studio. Michelle helps creative women who feel lost and stuck listen to their soul speak, using art as a path to purpose and inner wisdom. Your soul speaks through art. Are you ready to listen? Love that so much. So, Michelle, welcome. Thank you so much for being here today.
Yeah, my pleasure.
So, Michelle, I know that a lot of the work you do with women is around purpose, helping women find their purpose. And I would love to know a little bit about what was that journey like for you trying to find your own purpose and how did art fit in?
Yeah, that's a great question. Okay, so short story is I had my bachelor's in child psychology. So I love kids and I worked with kids for a long time. And I actually had a really serious injury. I ruptured my Achilles when I was 28 years old. And suddenly I couldn't do any of the things that kind of helped my life feel good. And it showed me how not good my life was actually once I was stuck in a wheelchair or on crutches for a while. And that was the impetus for me to go back to school. I started to feel that desire, that call. And I looked up some different programs, and that's when I discovered art therapy. I never knew that that was a thing. And I was like, I like psychology, I like art. Ha ha. So I ended up moving from Minneapolis to Boulder, Colorado, and going to school and getting my master's in art therapy. So I was like, this is my calling, especially when I got into the school, because I've always been kind of lonely, empath, sensitive, feeling like nobody gets me. And when I got to the graduate program at Europa, I was like, these are my people. Like, oh my God, the ugly duckling to swan moment of and it was beautiful to feel like I belonged. And I just felt this sigh of relief. So I was pretty sure that my purpose was to be an art therapist, right? And then after 3 years of that really great learning experience, they kind of drop you back into the real world. And I couldn't get a job as an art therapist. In fact, I only had one interview, and it was for the place that I interned at. So I was like, okay, I'm going to get this job. And then they called me back one day, and I had been waiting for their call. So I was just getting out of the shower, and I answer the phone, even though I'm naked. And he tells me that they're going with somebody else. So I'm like, okay. And hang up naked, sobbing, feeling like what I thought was supposed to happen and what my calling in life wasn't going through, what is wrong? So I actually babysat the summer after I graduated with my master's for $14 an hour or something. So you can imagine, I'm driving to work every morning to go babysit somebody's kids. And I was looking at the scenery going, what did I do wrong? How did I miss it? And how could I have all of this training, right, to actually be a counselor and have done all this work on myself and all this therapy and still feel so lost and so stuck? So that's pretty depressing. That was a low moment, let's say. And I also, at some time, I was like, Michelle, go to your art. That's what you learned in school. Go to your art for answers. So I went to the art store. I bought a big canvas. I brought it home, and I was like, okay, give me the answer, art. And I just started painting intuitively, whatever shows up. And what ended up emerging after a couple hours was a face. It was a woman. So I painted her in a little bit, and I'm not super great at painting people. So I sit back and I look at her and I'm like, okay, you're kind of ordinary. There's nothing special about you. Who are you and what are you here to tell me? And then I had one of the most powerful dreams of my life. The kind that you sit up out of bed, sweating and breathing hard. And you're like, oh my God. And it was about a tiger attacking me at this park where I grew up. And it was leaping and just about to devour me right when I bolted out of bed. And so that dream was lingering in my subconscious the next day when I woke up. And then when I looked at that boring lady on the canvas, I was like, what if she was a tiger woman? And that was an interesting idea. I was like, what if she isn't supposed to be boring? She's supposed to be this fusion of like the fierceness and strength and beauty of the tiger. And that idea kind of scared me because, I was like, it's a nice canvas and I put a couple hours into it. Like if I put black all over her face, I might ruin her. And that was the decision moment. Like, Michelle, are you willing to go in the bold direction and see what happens? Or are you going to stay with this, like, okay, kind of ordinary looking woman? So eventually I took the leap and I changed her into a tiger woman. And it was in that moment that I realized art is always guiding you to where you're supposed to be. And it gives you the opportunity to practice becoming who you want to be. So that moment in the painting was the universe saying, Michelle, you're supposed to be a fucking tiger woman. And once I was brave enough to put her tiger stripes on her and like take her into this really exciting direction, I loved that painting when it was done. Then I also had that transform in my life. I stopped interviewing for jobs. I didn't get any more interviews. I stopped trying to get interviews for jobs and I started my own private practice. And that led me on the journey that I've been on now, which is to be an entrepreneur, to do art therapy differently than the traditional path. And I'm so happy. It's like I needed the strength of the tiger to tell me, like, you're not supposed to go the traditional way. So it's like I like to say art is my spiritual guru. It guided me at that crossroads in my life where I would have just kept trying to do the normal thing because that's the only template I had, right? Like you graduate, you interview, you get a job, people pay you. But what I have now is so much better.
Awesome. I know so many of our viewers are going to resonate with that moment of having to choose, the I should or the but I'm called to do this, that crossroads. And that's such a great story. I love your tiger woman.
Yeah. And what I learned there that I tell all the women I work with now is if you're not willing to do it in art, you're never going to do it in life.
Oh, that's such a beautiful pearl of wisdom.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And it's funny because we will feel so scared to try it in the art because we don't want to ruin it.
Yes.
But I'm like, there isn't anywhere safer or easier to try it than in the art because in life, the consequences and the ramifications are so much bigger. So it really helps me be brave when I don't want to be brave.
Right. We're just putting paint on canvas. I've said that to women I work with before.
Yeah.
We're just putting paint on canvas. We can move forward. Oh, that's so good. Such a beautiful story. So Michelle, I know in the work you do with women, like at your art studio, it's not about like teaching women to paint a pretty picture. It's not the traditional art. You use art as a tool. So why is art, in the work you've done in your experience, why is art such an amazing tool for self-discovery and self-transformation?
Oh, it's so sparkly. I don't know how to answer that question. I just get excited when you talk about it.
Me too.
Art is an amazing tool for self-discovery because the essence of art making is to take what's inside of you and put it out here. And you get to make it tangible so that you can see it. And when you get it out here, you're like, yeah, that really helps you understand yourself because when it's inside, it's like all jumbled and confused and there's story attached to it and all kinds of stuff. So when you get it out here, it becomes clearer and tangible. And then you can also share it with other people. And that's quite powerful, right? Hey, look at this. This is where I'm at right now. And having somebody else resonate with that or tell you something that they see in it that you're like, that is true for me. And I didn't even realize that I put there. So the entire process is really self-discovery. And it starts before you even put the paint on the canvas, because if I put a really big blank canvas in front of you and I said, paint whatever you want, that's a reflection of you too. Some people are going to be paralyzed by fear. Some people are going to jump right in and like slap a bunch of paint on. Some people are going to want to sit and plan out what they're going to do. That's all information for who you are coming back to you from the process of making art before you ever put anything down.
And then it's there for you to see through your process. Yes.
And then it's there. Yep. And then it's there later for you to see as well.
Awesome. Um, so you touched on this a little. You were talking about sharing and letting other people sort of, see your art and reflect on how that feels true to them. What do you think the role of community is in all this? Because you're doing like deep inner work with women, and that can feel very private or solitary. Do you feel like there's a community sort of aspect in that also?
So much so that I'm like, yes, I want to yell like, yes. Nobody makes it alone. Nobody makes it alone on these journeys. So even the idea that introspection is an alone journey, like I get that, but I'm like, it's kind of not, because if all you do is go inside and like process how you're doing, but you don't ever say it out loud or share it with somebody and have somebody else respond to that, you've only taken a little bit of a step. It's kind of like you're still stuck in your own world. And we need that process of having it go all the way outside of us onto the art and then even further into somebody else's perception and back to us. That teaches us the most about ourselves. That's number one. But number two, art is a reflection of you. So are women. Like, one of my favorite things about running women's groups is that we have such common experiences. I was just running group last night. There's two women that were talking. One was probably 20 years younger than the other one, but the same words were coming out of their mouth. One was an empty nester talking about the transition she was facing. The other one doesn't have kids at all, but she was like, I need to figure out who I am now. So when you hear other people say the things that you're thinking and experiencing, you are learning so much about yourself and your place within the context of our culture, what it's like to be a woman in a patriarchy, and that you're not alone is number three. Like, what you're experiencing, no matter how lonely or isolating it feels to you, it's really not. Like, you can find other people that really understand and get you, and that helps you like breathe this sigh of relief. So I think it's inseparable almost.
Beautiful. Yes, thank you for sharing all of that. So, Michelle, I know you have a little practice to offer our viewers today, something they can start on their journey to their creative selves. Tell us
Yeah.
about
Okay. So I have a lot of empathy for people that are like, ooh, it's hard to think about making art. It's hard to imagine taking it out and actually putting something on paper. So this is my secret trick that helps anybody get through that creative block. And you can use any material. So there's no excuse to be like, well, I don't have paint, so I'll go get some later. Watch out for that, because those are mind stories.
that.
And instead, grab anything. Even I've got my journal here, like your line journal and a pen, doesn't matter. But you're going to create the ugliest thing you can.
Ooh.
Yeah. And what that does is it immediately separates what we think art is supposed to be about a lot of the time, which is making something pretty. We're afraid that it's not going to look good. We have so much expectation of ourselves. But when I tell you the expectation is to make it ugly, it forces those things to drop. So I've had a lot of people do this exercise, and they often tell me this helped me make art again. Now, what might happen is you might start making it and actually like it. That happens a lot. And it doesn't matter. Like, if you start making something ugly and you end up being like, I want to take it where it's going because it's pretty to me, that's fine. Like, the whole point is to just jumpstart you. Like, if your battery's dead and you're like, I'm going to give it a bolt of electricity, that's really the point of this. And then also, with any art, really take the time to observe yourself and the stories that you tell yourself. So when I ask you to make the ugliest thing ever, it might bring up some thoughts or some stories. And so knowing that that's part of the process and really working with that as a mindfulness experience is really helpful.
That is so valuable. I want all of our viewers to grab their materials now and make that ugly art. And you can share your ugly art with us in our Facebook group as well, if you want to share. And yeah, I can already see that just thinking about like make it ugly, like what that does to the stories in your head and what comes up when that sounds like a really valuable.
And then asking people to share it, that's a whole nother level. So
Yes.
we don't typically want to share the ugly parts of ourselves. So even making ugly art, you're going to notice resistance, like, I don't want to put it in the Facebook group. So, really just saying like, this is my ugly drawing, like, but that's like when women are crying too, and they're like, I'm sorry, I'm crying. It's like, it really is okay to cry. It's okay to have ugly art, but there's just so much context around that for why we think it might not be okay, or that other people will judge us. So just, I like to name all of that, bring the monster out from under the bed and like, you feel worried about this, but it's really okay.
So, Michelle, thank you again so much for sharing your journey and your passion for the work that you do here today. And thank you, viewers, for tuning in, and check your inbox tomorrow. We have some more amazing interviews coming your way as well.